Hi everyone, and welcome to this look back at a little slice of computing history, which could be seen as the last real swan song of Sir Clive Sinclair in the British computer market. And that's a real shame, because as we know, Sinclair could produce really fantastic machines. This one had one really good thing going for it. It was the brainchild of Sir Clive Sinclair, a knight of the realm and a visionary entrepreneur responsible for three of the most loved British computers of all time, the ZX80, ZX81 and ZX Spectrum. But it also had one really bad thing going for it. It was the brainchild of Sir Clive Sinclair, the man who almost lost it all chasing the dream of the affordable electric vehicle, and also having lost the Sinclair brand and most of its intellectual property to Alan Sugar's Amstrad. In 1982, Sinclair Research had hundreds of employees, a massive HQ, a global presence, and British home computing in the palm of his hand. By 1990, a mere 8 years later, and Sinclair Research was down to a headcount of 3, including Sir Clive himself. So what happened? And how did plans for a portable ZX Spectrum result in a machine more suited to boardroom members than bedroom coders? Well, join us as we discover the Cambridge Z88. Sinclair had been wanting to build a small form factor portable computer since before it was even really feasible to consider, and had engineers looking at the possibilities as far back as 1981, even before the ZX Spectrum was released. And with the advent of arguably the world's first true laptop computer, the Epson HX20, it was no longer a pipe dream, it was a definite goal. Riding on the success of the Spectrum 16K and 48K machines, the release of the QL in 1984 came with a whimper and not the massive bang that Sinclair had hoped. The machine was released too early, with too many issues, and even on early machines, half of the ROM hanging out the back on a dongle.
Alright, well now let's turn to something that wasn't designed 5 years ago, the QL. We have a number of queries about the Sinclair QL that have come in over our electronic mail. This is typical of many, from Dale Adgett, who lives in Exeter. And he says this: could you please ask Sir Clive 2 questions. Why the QL has no cassette port, and why it has half the operating system sticking out of the back of it?
Right. It has half the operating, or had half the operating sticks sticking out of the back, because we issued some early ones in that form. That's no longer the case. They're all built into the machine.
All right, let me just stop you there then. For those early ones, are you going to update them for the people who bought them?
Absolutely.
Or are they lumbered with it?
Absolutely. No, we told them that I'm afraid they were guinea pigs in a sense. We thought they'd like a machine early rather than no machine at all. They had the machine with the bit sticking out, but that'll be updated as soon as possible. Very soon indeed.
Right. What about the cassette port?
There's no cassette port because there are 2 micro drives built in. And of course they'll do the same job much faster, 10, 20 times faster.
Don't you think it's a little sad that people who have Spectrum software on micro drive can't just plug it into the QL?
Ah, well it may be sad, but you see that's really what MSX does. If it was MSX you could do that, but you'd have a 5-year-old machine. Now this machine is roughly 20 times as powerful as the Spectrum. And the Spectrum, by the way, is 2 or 3 times as powerful as the MSX machines. So those are the sort of standards we're talking about. If you've got this enormous leap, there's no way you can do this, any more than you could plug a Jaguar engine into a Mini.
Nobody's ever disputed your capacity as a salesman, sir. Now, the other question that we've had this from lots of people. Lovely machine, where are the manuals?
Well, I'm sorry about that. That was a blunder. We sent out some manuals with some of the pages missing. That's all been corrected. Every single person that had a manual has had it updated.
You said it.
1985, and Sinclair's obsession with the electric vehicle saw the release of the C5, almost universally ridiculed and a sales disaster. The world wasn't yet ready for the EV wave, and battery technology just wasn't there to support the dream. The C5 was effectively a 3-wheeled go-kart with a battery and a motor, and people saw through it. In April of 1986, the Sinclair brand and its IP was sold to Amstrad, who continued the Spectrum line but abandoned the QL. However, in the deal that was made, Amstrad didn't get hold of Project Pandora, which had been in development at one of Sinclair's other R&D units, and when the project had started, was meant to deliver a portable ZX Spectrum compatible machine, complete with inbuilt 2-inch screen. Rick Dickinson was again tasked with designing the machine, and there's a link in the description to a Flickr site showing some of Rick's designs. Post-Sinclair research, Clive Sinclair formed Cambridge Computers and resumed work on the Pandora project, but now under the name Z88, and after numerous design changes eventually launched the machine at the Which Computer Show on the 17th of February 1987. The machine reviewed well, with Practical Computing saying, "The Z88 could find a comfortable niche in the business market. Sales teams, peripatetic managers, warehouse supervisors, all sorts of people could find its portability extremely useful." And InfoWorld stated, "You will find that you have a really neat tool that can be carried nearly anywhere and has really astonishing powers, not only as spreadsheet and notebook, but as a real computer with a very powerful and efficient basic compiler." So let's take a look at it. At around the size of an A4 sheet of paper, an inch thick and around 2 pounds in weight, the Z88 was truly portable and would easily fit into a briefcase or hold-all. Running for approximately 20 hours on a set of 4 AA batteries, the machine boasts an 80 character by 8 line Super Twist LCD display, a CMOS version of the Z80 CPU running at 3.2768 MHz, 32K of RAM and a 128K ROM containing the custom OZ operating system and all of the device applications. The keyboard is rubber over a membrane and is dust and water resistant to light splashes and spills, so you wouldn't want to go swimming with it. It's nearly silent in use, although a software click can be turned on if required. On the left hand side is a wheel to adjust the contrast for the screen and a barrel power input. The right hand side contains the serial port for attaching the machine to your PC or Mac in order that you can transfer files back and forth, which you'll want to do quite often as the machine had no internal storage other than the RAM, which was volatile and needs the machine to be powered to maintain its contents, although there is a large capacitor in the machine which keeps RAM refreshed whilst you change the batteries, as long as you're quick. The flap on the front lifts to reveal 3 cartridge slots, which could be populated with a mix of RAM cartridges, EEPROMs or software on ROM. The EEPROM cartridges would allow you to save files down, but not delete or update them. Each save would create a new file, and these could only be deleted by a separate EEPROM eraser. There are modern cartridge solutions available today that provide non-volatile storage, thus addressing the only real major weakness in the machine, the other being the lack of a backlit display, although this would have caused much more drain on the batteries. Let's take a little look inside the machine. Now that we can see inside the machine, there's not a lot to it. Starting from the left hand side, we can see that contrast potentiometer for the LCD and the power socket, but there's also a small reset switch which is unmarked on the outside, and you need to poke it with a SIM card extractor or some such thing to reset the device. Moving in, we can see the large capacitor which holds the charge to the RAM while batteries are being changed, and next along we have the 128K ROM that contains the OS and applications, and that's followed by the internal 32K SRAM. The only surface mount chip in the case is an NEC gate array that handles multiple tasks such as the LCD and the serial port and memory bank switching, and over on the far right we have the Zilog Z80A. And finally and weirdly, there's an edge connector which in this machine at least there's no way to get to from the outside. I can only assume that at one point there were expansions planned, but by the time we got to this revision, those plans had been abandoned. So let's put the old thing back together and take a look at what it could do. Pressing both of the shift keys in unison brings the machine to life, and once booted, the machine is surprisingly snappy and responsive. The camera doesn't do a great job of picking up the detail of the screen, but to the naked eye it's really sharp and easy to read. Pressing the index key at any time brings you back to this screen, with a list of applications down the left hand side, and in the main section are the currently suspended application states that you can select and resume at any time. One of the applications is a Z80 port of BBC Basic, which you know I have a lot of respect for, as it's a really nice implementation of the language. You'll also know that I can't resist the old Dixon special while I'm here. It's just got to be done. The machine zips along at a fair old pace, and there are even ports of certain Spectrum games for the platform. It is, after all, essentially the same basic Z80 components as you'd find in the ZX series of computers. You'll notice that we can save, clear and reload our basic programs as we would with any other media, and pressing the index key will return us to the main application as before, saving the state of the basic application for us to resume whenever we choose. The machine comes preloaded with Pipe Dream, which is essentially a port of the View application series released for the Acorn machines, and comprises a word processor and spreadsheet, which are very intuitive when in use. Diary functions, a calendar, alarm and all of the usual PDA type applications are here, along with software to help you transfer files, but for me it's really all about the core productivity suite, Pipe Dream and Basic. Portable access to those would have kept me very happy back in the day, if I'd even known about this machine back then, which I don't recall being the case. So there we have the Cambridge Computers Z88, and I don't know about you, but if this machine launched today with a lithium battery that powered the machine for days or even weeks instead of hours, an OLED backlit screen, non-volatile memory and a USB connection instead of serial, I reckon there would still be a market for it. It does what it does really well, and if that's all you need and it was cheap enough, it would find a niche. In any case, I've really enjoyed getting to know this machine, and I can't help feeling that the world is a better place for people like Clive Sinclair, because we need people who continue to innovate, take chances and fail spectacularly, and then not give up. Z88 Mr. Musk? As always, if you like the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of new content. If you'd like to sponsor the channel, hit the join button to get details of how. And please leave your comments below. Did you have a Z88? What did you use it for? Let us know, and until next time in the shack, it's goodbye from me.